Mike, Ruben, super excited for this timely conversation with both of you. It seems like, over the last few months, Smarter Technologies has been everywhere. We've seen some announcement coming from you guys. Your team has done a great job of continuously putting out what you're doing. You're accelerating one of the most active platforms in healthcare automation. And with the acquisition of Pieces Technologies now, you've completed the fourth acquisition this year, which is incredible. You're on such a streak. So a lot of momentum, transforming revenue cycle management. Wanted to give you guys some time to chat a little bit with our audience about what this all means. Would love to first start off with Mike, and then Ruben will kick over to you. But Mike, this is your fourth acquisition this year. What makes Pieces Technologies, this acquisition particularly strategic for Smarter Technologies and contribute to what you're building more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jared. And we are really, really excited to work with Ruben and his team. At the core of it, our company's mission is really to help make a dent for hospitals with respect to their administrative spend and their reimbursement. I think the way to think about revenue cycle, there's many ways to think about it, but one way to think about revenue cycle is there's two fundamental steps. The first is getting the invoice correct, which is about making sure that the invoice reflects the underlying care that was provided, the ICD-10 codes, CPT codes, and so on and so forth. And the second is the jumping through 57 hoops or so to get paid on that invoice and actually receive cash in the bank. And, I think in terms of that first piece, getting the invoice correct, I think the goal is to be able to deeply understand the patterns of clinical care and make sure that the line items are correct, and then facilitate in a way that doesn't cause physician burnout, doesn't increase cognitive load, kind of all the documentation and sort of coding work that needs to happen, for that representation. So I think, it's strategic from the angle of marrying kind of what we've been doing on the pre-bill side in terms of understanding what should be in the documentation, and what the Pieces team has been doing in terms of helping providers, kind of write and generate that documentation in the first place. And then I think the second, key reason why it's strategic is not just from a product standpoint, but that, as a company, we deeply believe that kind of doing healthcare well, of course, requires the many, many, many different talents. One of which is, kind of revenue cycle and finance professionals, but the other, of course, are the people, kind of providing care to the patient and, kind of being able to do their work as well. So I think this is where there's also just from a leadership standpoint, and people standpoint, I think Ruben specifically and his team more broadly are just fantastic there. And we're super excited to work with them because of it.
I want to talk a little bit about SmarterNotes. Tell our audience more about what SmarterNotes is all about. And then in particular, I know you kind of, in talking about this new relationship, you mentioned some parts, but like what market forces or client pain points are driving the demand for that offering right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think on the outpatient side, I think one of the things that we've seen is the ability to decrease the amount of time physicians are spending writing the note is itself a powerful, market force. But it turns out, of course, that the note actually has two separate purposes. One is for physicians to communicate with, kind of other clinical people in terms of the rationale and how they're thinking about the care. And then the other is to serve as kind of the sort of record for how they were thinking about it for billing purposes later on. And I think on the outpatient side, one of the things that the ambient players have done a fantastic job of is, kind of understanding the conversations with the patient and capturing that first sort of component of the note, which is like clinically what matters and how do I think about it. On the inpatient side, this is where, if you imagine a patient in the ICU on a ventilator, it's not the conversation with the patient that defines the plan and what's in the note. It's a lot more about what is on average about 30,000 other data points that drive that clinical narrative. And so Pieces has done a really fantastic job sort of deeply understanding and mapping that clinical narrative and being able to create a note that saves physician time and energy and cognitive capacity. But then to add to that second value of the note, what we've done on the pre-bill side is to say, but what gaps are there in notes from a revenue cycle and billing and quality metric documentation standpoint? And I think being able to simultaneously decrease physician burden and increase the accuracy of the note as pertains to, kind of what eventually makes it onto the claim, I think is just an incredibly powerful 1-2 combination. And I think Smarter Notes is really the first, kind of product that is able to get there.
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to kick it over to Ruben a little bit too to continue on with Smarter Notes. Ruben, great to have you on Slice of Healthcare for the first time. Would love to hear, I mean, you can continue on from where Mike ended if you'd like, but also would love to hear how, what Smarter Notes is doing directly translates into financial and quality improvements for hospitals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, want to echo what Mike said. We're incredibly excited to be part of the Smarter team now, and we think there's some incredible future ahead, and hopefully, especially for our clinicians across the country on the ground that are doing this work every day, and that really is the important part. I think there's two parts to it. One is, you know, we we are over the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've asked physicians to do more and more of not only all the clinical work that they have to do, but also making sure that everything is there for themselves and their hospitals to get paid. And it's a huge amount of work. And we want to, what I love about Smarter Notes is the whole financial billing portion of it, they don't have to worry about as much because everything that they're doing, we're going to make sure that that is captured appropriately for revenue capture, as Mike talked about. And what we're trying to do on the front end is make their note writing process as easy as possible for them. As Mike said, in these very complex, dynamic inpatient environments with multiple different specialties. And so that combination of making that note writing process as easy as possible, and then also making sure that they're going to capture everything they need to be able to get reimbursed appropriately. So that's what I'm really excited about with Smart Notes. No one else has, in my view, really done it as comprehensively as this product will do it.
Now, Ruben, continuing on with you,
Yeah.
there's several players in the clinical documentation space, right? What about Smarter Technologies' approach to revenue cycle made this the right partner for pieces? And why was it the right time to join?
Yeah, excellent question. So first is, I think Smarter DX and the entire Smarter team is unmatched in capturing the revenue appropriately in a way that makes it really efficient for health systems. The numbers that they post on the improvements that they're able to get for health systems is incredible. And that's just reflected in their growth and their performance. That's part one. Part two is, we love the fact that it's led by clinicians. I think you see a lot of clinician technologists like myself that are working in the domain that we know well of, which is providing care and doing that documentation work like you talked about. It's rare. I don't know if any revenue cycle company that's led by physicians that I'm aware of, that it's certainly not as successful as what Mike's put together, Mike and Josh. And so there was immediate camaraderie, there was immediate vision alignment, because at the end of the day, the doctors are the ones, and all the ancillary professionals that are part of that team are the ones that are really doing the care. And we'd like to get back to that environment where what they do and the note they write is the most important thing, as opposed to all the other things downstream. And so when this merging of what Pieces does on the front end and everything that Smart does beautifully on the back end, I thought it was just an incredible combination and very complementary. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you want to look for is there like, overlap and, elements that we're doing the same thing. Almost in this case, it's a perfect jigsaw puzzle coming together. So, it really was to me, a marrying of, soulmates of companies, if you put it that way.
I want to kick it back over to Mike real quick. Thank you so much, Ruben. When we look at like hospitals and health systems, they're increasingly interested in tying ambient technologies like clinical note generation to revenue cycle performance. Why do you think this convergence is happening now And how is Smarter Technologies positioned to lead in this space?
I think that before now, the complexity of clinical care was actually sort of too great for, kind of the data science that we used to have. And, to give an example, if you have a patient, let's say I would say, Jared, help me write an algorithm that detects high blood pressure. And you would think, hey, relatively trivial, right? I mean, you have high blood pressure is defined on, various guidelines, and you just write if the blood pressure is greater than that, that's high blood pressure. In fact, there's an incredible number of complexities. Let's say that you are sitting in an emergency room and around you is a super loud environment and you're frustrated because, it's been a while since you've been waiting for the doctor. You might have high blood pressure, but you won't have the clinical diagnosis of high blood pressure. Let's say that you're in a lot of pain because you had a hip fracture and you got sent to the hospital. You might have high blood pressure because of the amount of pain, but that's not clinical sort of high blood pressure. And so the level of kind of sophistication necessary to understand not just, kind of individual data points, but as you might imagine, not just one blood pressure reading, but an average of 30,000 data points per chart during an inpatient stay, and map that back into a clinical narrative, um, really just wasn't possible before, I think, the recent advancements in data science. And um, I think one of the um, advantages that we collectively have, both for Ruben and us as under the Smarter umbrella, is we have over 70 data scientists, many of whom have PhDs from Stanford, backgrounds from Google and Apple, and so you have kind of a real depth from a technical capacity. And then we have people who, have worked in revenue cycle and have been part of this field for, you know, multiple decades. And so you have a real understanding of what it takes to build kind of real functional products that deliver, kind of in this space. So I think together it's about, in some ways taking what is tomorrow's technology but being able to bring that to customers and generate real results today. And I think the marriage of both the technology side and the experience, kind of delivering for hospitals at scale is what makes us relatively unique.
Last question, perhaps the most difficult question of all before we wrap this up. What is the most annoying thing Ruben has done? No, I'm just kidding. That's it.
That's a
We're not going to answer that. Stay tuned until next time.
Wait, do we have a hard stop in 5 minutes? I'm just kidding, Ruben.
Man.
You know how the ends of deals are, right?
No, everyone can fill in the comment. No, I'm just kidding. Really appreciate having both of you on here. Congratulations to both of you. I'm sure this isn't going to be the last acquisition we see Smarter Technologies make. So look forward to discussing future ones as well. And yeah, Ruben, congrats to you and your team. It's incredible to see what you've already built and then what Smarter Technologies will continue to do from here. So yeah, everyone stay tuned. We're going to be covering all the stuff that you end up doing in the space. And I know that'll be a lot. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.